Welcome to the Nourishment Mindset Podcast, your guide to good food, good health, and a good life. And now, here's your host, Nutrition Network advisor and author of the Nourishment Mindset, Dixie Huey.
Hi, y'all. Welcome back to the Nourishment Mindset Podcast. If you're a regular listener or viewer, and bienvenue if you've never joined us before. This is the place for focus on real whole foods, straight talk, and the pleasures of the table. I want to thank you for being a listener and a viewer. Really appreciate. If you're not yet following me on Instagram, it's just Nourishment Mindset. I'm Dixie L. Huey on LinkedIn, if you'd like to see my posts there. And for all of you who have purchased my book, I really, really appreciate your support, helping us get the word out about why real whole foods are nature's medicine. They heal. And there's a lot of BS out there. So that's part of what the Nourishment Mindset is about, is cutting through the crud, making things simpler. So one quick announcement before I introduce today's guest. That announcement is that I am happy to help you with your holiday gifting. So if you would like to gift friends and family with the Nourishment Mindset book, all I'd like you to do is come up with a list, their name, their mailing address, and I will gift wrap and send from you signed copy of my book, and I can do your whole holiday list if you want. I've already had 2 takers on that. So unique gift signed by me, same price. I include shipping. So think about that. If it's of interest, email me at favorfat@gmail.com. All right, y'all, today's guest is Craig Lane, and we are going to hear all about his fascinating life, what he does for a living. To me, in one word, and I'm just meeting Craig through a mutual friend. Craig is a healer. So from body work to nutrition, Chinese and herbal medicine, this guy is a wealth of knowledge. So welcome, bienvenue, Craig. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you agree with that description?
Somebody last night, we were talking about, oh, you're all about Star Trek. Somebody said to me once, and I've always resisted labels. Like I was labeled a surfer many years ago, and I'm like, no, I'm a man who surfs. And you could even take the label off man. I don't even identify as a man anymore. I mean, I know I have the thing down below, but so my identity has sort of been voluntarily and involuntarily taken into a bigger space of awareness, you could say. So it's fair, that's fair. We can have some improv fun here,
Yes, we will. Let's get real. From what I understand, you're not even supposed to be on the planet talking to me today. Why is that?
So there's these words, the experts, right? Like, the thing we just went through, I won't name it, but the experts say, and then people get all seduced and hypnotized by the experts, So this one doctor, he was hovering above me, and he said, I don't know how you're alive. And I'm laying in the bed with a broken neck, and they don't even know I have a broken neck at this point. They're just kind of figuring out what the heck happened to me. And I'm there going, is that really appropriate to say to somebody when they're laying in a vulnerable position that, And then the next thing out of his mouth is, oh, and you'll never surf again. And I'm like, I got mad, I'm 21 years old. I'm laying there. I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, you're not a healer. Like, and I didn't even know what healing was, but I'm like, this is the opposite of what you'd want to hear from someone hovering above you in a superior position, standing over you. You shouldn't be alive, and you're never going to do this and never that, and disclaimer, insurance this, and lawsuit anti that. And, they're playing off from their own fear. And I was already 6 years into punk rock, and I had already woken up from USA Incorporated in a high school history class. So I was already well aware that there was something that I didn't like about the USA, and things I did like about the people, but the government, so I got clear about my healing. Yeah, I shouldn't be here. Okay, the experts say that. Then I had a concussion 10 years ago, and that was another one that There was blood in my eye and my whole skull here, it was bad. And um, I should have died according to a few other experts, but the magic of it was that my girlfriend at the time kept me alive all night because I wanted to die. I was in so much pain. So I'm alive because of love, really. Love for myself and love of another. That, if I could say there was any one person, that a couple of people. Oh, and when I broke my neck, a man did save my life because I tried to get up out of the car that was smashed, and he had paramedic experience, and he said when my arm went numb when I tried to go up, he said, you probably broke something in your spine, don't move, because I was struggling to get out. And then
Right.
I was like, oh, right, maybe I did break something because my arm's numb now and it wasn't numb before I moved. So my vertebrae had slipped just a little bit and pinched off that dermatome to the arm, and C7 is what had happened.
Well, that is an amazing couple of examples of the power of the human body. Self-healing, I'm sure you did plenty of other things, but I'm always talking with my son about that. For whether it's, a skinned knee or a bruise, I'm just reminding him, look, your body can heal itself. Or if he has a fever, and he knows he doesn't want to take medicine. It's there if you need it at sometimes, but my explanation to him is just that's your body's immune response. We don't want to interfere with that. Let your body do what it knows to do. So I'm curious, when did you realize that you had a calling to heal and to do the body work and offer your knowledge and wisdom to others?
When I was 21, when I broke my neck at 21, I was on a journey to being an architect, and it was a totally different trajectory. And then that sort of, because the neck is the woo-woo fifth chakra world. My self-expression dramatically changed after the neck. And so my desire to heal led me to becoming what I am now, but I had no intention of doing it when I started. It was, okay, what's going to help first? Because the physical therapy was a joke. And so I turned to yoga. And that was actually the first thing, was yoga, 3-4 months out of the broken neck. So yoga, I'll kind of Reader's Digest it. Yoga led to 4 years later a very strong spiritual awakening, actually in a Ram Dass meditation. It was quite innocent. And then I was like, oh my God, everything I thought love was, it's just like the enlightened masters all say, because I made enlightenment as sort of a research project. Like, what is this thing, enlightenment? And then I had this experience of pure love, of an awakening, and they have all these words for it. And then that brought me back to school, because I was working in the 1989 earthquake. I was down in LA working for a company called Unisys, which is like IBM, Apple. They were a big computer provider at the time. I don't know how big they are now, but so I kind of like, and then I was over here in Santa Cruz. After that, I moved back after the earthquake, and I was living 4 houses from the beach, cushy job at JCPenney. I was a merchandiser buying women's shoes and women's apparel and luggage was my responsibilities as a merchandiser. And I loved it, but it was like selling people things they didn't really want, upsell and sell this, and emotional sale and all these things they teach you in retail, right? Sales. And I was like, this is disgusting. And then because of my broken neck, I was changing my diet, and people were coming to me in my JCPenney office asking me questions about my nutrition. And I was like, I got to go back to school, because but I didn't go back to school until I had a bunch of freakish dream of a faraway land on an island, this guy beckoning me on, and I got an opportunity to go to Costa Rica the next day. So the dream was a premonition. And so I quit my job, went to Costa Rica for a month, came back, went back to school at nutrition. And so I'd say yoga led to nutrition, and then nutrition led to a bunch of other experiences in my late 20s that I'll just say they were experiences I couldn't deny. They weren't linear, they weren't rational. I could go on and on. I have a whole 200-page book that I wrote about these freakish experiences from age 20 to age 40. So I think that in a lot of ways, I never had surgery, and I kept seeing my body kept healing, like broken neck. I didn't have surgery, and I had a lot of different injuries and wounds and never once had surgery. And so that's why I started to see like, wow, the body heals by itself. And then started growing plants 35 years ago. And, the wounded plant, you water it and take care of it, and it comes back to life. And it's like, life is more of a mystery than we were taught.
Absolutely. So I have two questions. The broken neck seemed to have changed your life's trajectory. Like, do you think something, I don't know, metaphysical happened within you? Or was it one of those, I should be dead, I have to really find my calling? Like, how do you describe that change? Or can we even understand it?
Yeah, it's a paradox and a mystery, because I always had a fighting spirit, indomitable spirit that was running my life, and I didn't know what I was dealing with until much later in my life that I might have chosen this on some level. But the broken neck was nothing more than a cocky, arrogant 21-year-old getting sideways, playing Dukes of Hazzard, going 50 miles an hour, lost control of the vehicle, wasn't wearing a seatbelt. And that was the consequence of that decision to show off for my friends who were behind me. And I was going to give them a dust cloud, the Dukes of Hazzard ahead, and, and lost control of the vehicle. And, and yeah. And so I look at that and, in isolation, you go, yeah, what a tragedy, what an idiot you were, to be judgmental. But in the long run, I tell people like, no. Because there's at least 1,000 people alive or more because of that experience for me led me to who I am, to save a bunch of people or help them save themselves is more correct, and say like, no, you don't want to do it that way. You want to do it this way, and to have faith in the healing process. And we're just not nourished enough, but the big wake up call was age 15 in US history class. And the word manifest destiny came across the history book. And some light bulb went on, because I believed in America to that point. And then I was like, manifest destiny. I'm like, what happened to the Indians here?
Yeah.
And boy, the teacher and the students and I got bullied and ostracized and picked on. Oh, you're against the white culture, and you're an Indian lover, and a heathen. And I was like, I'm just asking questions. Like, don't you want to have a conversation about this? Because maybe they were screwed over. Like, you talk about the Jewish Holocaust. Well, the Native American Holocaust was just as big, but they buried that because they don't want us to. So that woke me up, and I shaved my head and got into punk rock and had a punk rock magazine until I broke my neck with a couple of friends.
Not going to be a boring life. I don't think it has been. So the other thing that you mentioned is really cool to me, because a mentor, I guess I'll say, I selected him as a mentor. I don't know if he knows he's a mentor, but he recommended Ram Dass to me about a week ago. And so I am about halfway through How Can I Help, which is really helping me learn to serve others without draining me. I'm curious, did you meet Ram Dass?
No. I always wanted a guru, because when I woke up at 25, I was reading Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi. And I mean, the stories were, like his guru was in two places at once, for example. And I was like, wait a minute, how could he be on the train and 2,000 miles away with this other family? Because it was documented, and I'm like, life is we were sold this dumbed down life, but I don't think life is, I think life is magical, So, yeah, I felt like I'd seen enough, but the Ram Dass book was just me trying things out because I was curious. Mm-hmm. And I forgot the name of the book, but it was basically the inquiry, who am I?
Right.
I was musing on that inquiry, like, who am I really? Am I Craig? I think Craig's a label. Well, what's beyond Craig? And then I'm like, oh shit.
It's a lot of thinking, man. Are you still in Santa Cruz?
Yes, I grew up in the South Bay here.
That's a perfect place for you, man. I used to live in San Francisco, and I would come down and do that. I think it was called just the Santa Cruz Triathlon, but we always had a fun weekend there. It's just, y'all do it differently there. It's a different lifestyle. I love it. So on the Nourishment Mindset podcast, we talk a lot about nutrition. It's not the only thing the Nourishment Mindset is. So I would like to focus on the aspects of your healing practice that will be maybe newer to our listeners and viewers. I'd love to know, and I'm sure we could have a 6-hour talk on this, but just the philosophy behind Chinese medicine and how you apply it in your practice, because Eastern medicine in general fascinates me. And the fact that, we can blend and we can draw from different disciplines, but I know very little about it. So enlighten me, please.
That was a trick question by a Buddhist MD many years ago. His student was my girlfriend's, and she was getting her PhD in happiness, and he led me to this question. I knew he was leading me, and he said, all these beautiful questions. He says, "So, are you enlightened?" And it's a trick question, and I knew immediately. I was like, "No," because I was like, "No, we don't get enlightened. We see what's always and already enlightened through us. Like the present moment is enlightenment." But by the time we perceive the present moment and operate in it, we're at a time delay to reality because of our perceptive apparatus. We're always a split second behind reality because we have to perceive reality. By the time we perceive reality, reality's already moved on. If that makes any sense to people or you, then you're kind of on the right track.
I'll have to sit on my yoga mat and do some inhalations and exhalations on that.
So I prayed for a guru, and Yogananda was my first sort of guru, but he was dead, and I loved the books. And so I say that because this is still the Chinese medicine thing. And so I got into my nutrition degree, and I was very, very upset with the nutrition bachelor's degree program. I'd already gotten my bachelor's degree in business because I dropped out of architecture and got a degree in business instead. Then I went back to school to get my nutrition degree, and I was so excited to help people heal. And then I'm like, what? There's no healing here. This is kissing up to the medical system. And I have to work for free for a year to be a dietitian in a hospital full time without pay. Like, what? I'm like, this is a bunch of, I see. They're only making it for the rich people to be able to do. Oh, dietitian's a code word for rich, entitled person. I mean, these are my judgments, of course. And I'm like, well, I need to find another way to learn what's a well-established world tradition. I thought, okay, I'll look at Chinese medicine. It's been around a long time. There's credibility, there's results. And then I went deeper and I went, the Taoists were like the Chinese Indian Native Americans. What were the Chinese Native Americans? Oh, that was the Taoist culture. And that interested me enough because they were talking about the study of duality. So where there's hot, there's cold, where there's a top, there's a bottom, where there's a left, there's a right. Where there's an inside, there's an outside. So the basis of Chinese medicine and yin and yang, when I was 28, 29, I knew that I had a lifetime ahead of me, that I was trained in the study of the isolation of things. But the Oriental cultures, their language is pictograms, right? Their language is even much different than ours. And I knew enough because I had an English minor. I studied linguistics and language to know that the very way that they think in the Orient, at least in the olden days, is a process way of thinking, and they're not isolating. They're in this wholeness. And I realized I need to start to learn that and embody that if I'm going to learn yin and yang in Chinese medicine. So that was age 28, and I'm 58 now. So I'm about 30 years into the study of the seasons and how does my body feel in each season, the study of times of day and the circadian rhythm of the day, and the thousands of clients I've seen that were a reflection of my own self. So it boils down to what one teacher said in Chinese medicine to me. He said, if you're stuck on a case, a health case, break it down into yin and yang. In other words, break the person down into their dualities. Are they excess or deficient? Is it acute or chronic? Are they hot or cold? Are they in an anabolic or a catabolic process? Are they wet or dry? Those are the things that I look at now. And that's the way I teach nutrition, is because those things you only need your hands and your senses for. You don't need technology in my world to learn how to assess human beings and yourself. Because to me, when the electricity goes out at the end of the day, the doctors and the medical people are screwed. Because without their technological tools, they're worthless. But I'm a barefoot doctor. I don't need the technology to help someone heal. I got plants over there and techniques over here that are free. So that's what I got through Chinese medicine in the Orient was, this worship of we're the top of the evolutionary pyramid and technology is the top and blah, blah, blah. And then this other Chinese teacher said, the problem with Western thought and medicine is arrogance.
Touche. Super touche. I grew up with an orthopedist father, and it was always like, you're a doctor. Great. That's, you help me walk again. That's wonderful. But I absolutely understand what you're saying. It's a whole, really, it sounds like it's a thought process. It boils down to how you're using your brain with your clients and the way that you assess them. So the electricity goes out, Shevu. You can do what you need to do because you have plants. I assume your hands play a role in the healing that you provide. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I really admired this acupuncturist that I was in my late 20s, early 30s. And this dude, I just sat across the table from him, and he looked at me and he had me stick my tongue out and talked a little bit. And he summed up my entire health and life about 90% correct after just 5 minutes.
Whoa. And
I was like, oh, I want to be like that. Like, he didn't have anything. He just looked at me and looked at my tongue and asked a few questions and smelled my breath. And then and I was like, wait, that's magic. 5 minutes? And you just told me most of my major patterns. I was blown away. So I wanted to be that guy. A spiritual teacher came into my life in 2000. So I was 35. And he has a saying that I think that I try to embody. And Krishnamurti has a similar pointer. Okay, so this is a pointer. The more I know myself, the less I know about myself.
I can relate to that totally. This is going to sound ridiculous. My listeners and viewers know that I had a 20-year career in the wine industry, and I use Italy as an example. So you think you know about wine. I became a sommelier. I got this advanced diploma thing with distinction, blah, 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 blah. Once you learn a lot about wine, you realize you don't know jack, because Italy, for example, has 700 native grape varieties. Like, you're never going to know anything about wine. You just will know how little you know the more you study. And that's beautiful, right? I mean, to me, that's a human being. That's nature. That's, what we've been talking about, healing. I mean, we don't know anything. And for me, that's okay. Not that I'm not curious about things, but I don't need to have things figured out. I'm fine with ambiguity. So
700 kinds of grapes. Oh my God.
Native varieties. Yeah. And that's just Italy. So think of, we just think of Merlot and maybe Sangiovese, but no, it's infinite. So if wine is infinite, imagine the body. And I saw on your website something that I'm not surprised by a Native American medicine wheel. What is that?
So there's a couple of ways to speak to that. So the medicine wheel is another version of yin and yang. Just like the Ayurveda has their 3-tiered system, the 3 dosha system, and they have 5 elements too, but it's a different 5 elements than Chinese medicine and different than our Western 4 elements. So the natives, the white culture, I believe, took it from the natives, but this idea of earth, air, water, and fire, right?
Okay.
And so the medicine wheel is composed of those 4 elements. And so the cosmology goes, the rising sun is like the new day, is like the birth, and that's the water, because life always comes out of water, right? So every native tradition has So that's where you start the medicine wheel in the east, in the northern hemisphere. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west, right? So there's this pull of east to west and a pull of north south. So as you work your way around from growth, then you go to the fire element, which causes things to grow, the sun, and that's the south. And there's all these, the different tribes of North America labeled it differently, but there is some general agreement. And that's what I'm trying to bring to people is, I call it natural law, the laws of nature that you can't argue with, you can't disagree with. You can do all that, but it doesn't mean they're going to change for you. They're laws, the way things work. So then the south, things grow. Then you have the west, the setting sun. And that was often called the magician energy. Like, when the sun's setting is like harvest time, right? It's like the end of it's like fall. And so I'd call that the earth element, but different cultures don't agree on what the magician, whether it's earth or air. And you got water and fire. What you got left is earth and air. So I call it earth because it's harvest, right? You've got substantial squashes and onions and all your harvest of the years of sun's growth. And then it goes around to the north, which in the northern hemisphere, the north is the dark part of the forest, right? The dark part of the building, the white-haired people, the old people. And well, your body's more air than it is earth when you're old. Generally, a lot of people, they sort of, well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of people gain weight in our culture and get bigger as they get older, but that's not necessarily natural. And so then you've got this north, and that was the air element. And my passion and still burning in me is to bring that to people of like, the medicine wheel is not a mystical concept per se. It's just another version of seeing the process of birth, growth, harvest, and decay, renew cycle.
Right. Beautiful. So how do you use that in practice to guide your recommendations, or is it more of a framework of how to think?
It's a framework, I'd say, more than what I'm looking at. One of my favorite teachers, a lot of my early teachers in the Orient, the Oriental part, were just super sharp. And so I knew when I started my nutrition degree, when half of the women were either anorexic or bulimic.
Yes.
I saw that I'm going to have to be at least in part an amateur psychologist studying nutrition, because people are making their nutritional decisions from a broken, traumatized place, right? So I was like, I need to approach this differently. And so I started learning counseling skills, basically, because I started to see like we need to look at what I call the choice maker. It's my first foundation. Like, why are we keep choosing the same idiotic choice, to drink 6-pack of beer every night, or a bottle of wine every night, or a pack of cigarettes every day, or the coffee and the donut for breakfast and nothing else? Why do we do that? Was the inquiry. So I wouldn't say it became a framework as much as it was sort of in the background, but what guides my decisions, what this teacher said was, can this person that's sitting across from you, can they even be happy at all? Start there. Because if they can't be happy, you're going to take a different tact with them than if they can be happy.
Wow. So,
and this is subjective, because you're looking at another person, right? So it's judgment versus discernment. Like, what are they reflecting to me that I might need to look at in myself? Was something that I saw really early on, because if you got trauma, you're going to have triggers. And who isn't traumatized in our culture?
Yes. And that for me is really, that's what I'm personally working on right now for my profession. And of course, for myself, how do you really separate it? But that has been the hardest part for me, is just it is probably impossible to disentangle the trauma and the mental health from the nutrition piece. And the reason why that's personally difficult for me, I was speaking with colleagues about this, is because when 25, how many ever years ago, when I was in college, I abandoned my plan to go to grad school for a PsyD after working in a mental hospital for free, of course. Because I realized I don't want to do this. I don't want to deal with people's psychological trauma. I love studying psychology, but the practice of being a therapist and the study are two very different things. So I ran away to the wine industry for 20 years. Then I got really into nutrition and health and fitness coaching and training and all that stuff. And that's all great. I love all that. But the people I work with, most of them do have, and it's amazing how it affects the nutrition choices, the traumas, the mental health. I mean, I work with a lot of patients who have type 2 diabetes, obesity, that sort of thing. And I find myself now asking, I wonder what came first, chicken or egg? Did the mental health set them on the trajectory for obesity and diabetes? Did that make them more mentally, anguished? Like, obviously there is no answer, because there's no answer to chicken or egg either, but it's just, they're so intertwined, I guess. So I please tell me how to fix it.
Well, okay, I need to put something into the diabetic thing. Can I add that in right now?
Sure.
Okay, so I about 15 years ago, no, was it, wait, 2011, 12 years ago, I left. I was 10 years in working at a chiropractic office doing a lot of body work. Okay. And I never told that story, but I'll tell that other story some other, maybe later. So I'm doing full-time Shiatsu, which is acupuncture with, acupressure and Shiatsu. And I'm talking to people, and I'm like, I'm a nutritionist too. So I got their ear for an hour working on them. And I started to look at the misdiagnosis level. So I looked it up about 12 years ago. What is the medical misdiagnosis level? And it was 42% at the time. I'm like, this is unacceptable to be like 42%. Like, and these are professionals. So I took it upon myself to start learning assessment and whatnot, because the system, as I saw it, was so broken. And so I'm about 12 years into, like, I learned the study of the eyes, iridology and sclerology, the study of the white of the eye and the colored part of the eye, because that's free. And it's an X-ray. It's a map of the whole body. So I don't need lab work to assess someone, but I have 12 years into lab work now. I got started with Standard Process Incorporated about 14 years ago. And a lot of questions started coming up about how crappy we were trained through Royal Lee and his teachings. And so this is the big trick with diabetes. Okay, so hemoglobin A1C. I tell people, like, well, hemoglobin's a red blood cell oxygen marker. So how are they tying blood sugar to a red blood cell? I'm like, that seems kind of weird, doesn't it? Tricky, tricky,
right.
Tricky. Like, ooh, the magician's up there. You're pre-diabetic. So part of the thing with people that are sick is they want to find an identity to rest in. I'm a cancer victim.
Right.
I'm a diabetic. I'm a blah, blah, blah. Insert identity, right?
Name it.
Yeah. We're health coaches. There's our identity, right? So I looked at it a little deeper, and I was like, okay, why are they tying blood sugar to this hemoglobin, this A1C thing? And so I looked a little deeper, and it was like, oh, it's damaged, glycated, sugar-coated red blood cells. The percentage of which, so the higher the percentage, the more blood sugar damaged red blood cells you have, which you want that percentage to be as low as possible, right? So
your news.
We're not even really explaining that to people right there. It took me, a minute to explain that? And not one doctor, I've asked hundreds of people, has ever explained this to their client when they diagnose them as diabetic based on that one blood test.
The thing that I will say, it's a Southern expression, burns me up, is you have all these people that are, I call it, on the diabetes train, and they don't know it because no one runs fasting insulin. Like, we don't necessarily have to even have pre-diabetes. The other thing I say that it doesn't really get me in trouble, but it's controversial, is I don't believe in pre-diabetes. To me, it's like somewhat pregnant. kind of pregnant, almost pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not. So you either have messed up blood sugar or you don't. I think the reason we call it prediabetes is because we don't want to admit that over half of Americans have type 2 diabetes. That's what's really going on. Just the what is it? The optics are not good. So, but it is, and it's I don't even know that people understand why that's such a problem. Like, oh, okay, well, just take medicine, just take Ozempic, that stupid commercial. I don't watch TV, so I don't hear it much, but sometimes if I'm on the internet or something, but it's every cell in your body being damaged. It's exactly what you do not wish to see in a human being. So it riles me up. And then of course, most physicians, they don't run the tests. It can tell you 2 decades before you actually cross that line, that HA1C line. And then the damage is done. And I don't know, it makes me batty. So tell me more about the eyes. Is this part of how that gentleman that you mentioned when he had you stick out your tongue and then was he also looking at your eyes, or those are separate stories?
I don't know, but the use of the whites of the eye goes back in Chinese medicine, some old texts, at least 2,000 years. They have drawings of little markings and characters for the different parts of the whites of the eye. The Cherokee Indians were using it in the southeast of the United States. This is Stuart Wheelwright's work. He went and studied all this through Jack Tips and through the sclerology system. So I don't think he was, but what I saw very quickly when I got into this was, wow, I can get a handle on so what I started doing was, when I was learning this, one of my teachers says, you're gonna teach what you want to learn. And I was like, well, that's intimidating. Like, I'm gonna get up there in front of people and talk about stuff I don't know anything about so I can learn it. Like, well, that's a little bit of a job. So, but what I did though is I took my iridology tongue, I get my camera out and I say, okay, everybody likes to know, what your tongue's telling you, right? Because the Chinese doctor has you stick your tongue out, and the eyes. So I get people up on stage, and I get 30, 40, 50 people in a class and say, okay, who wants to come up on stage and volunteer? Don't tell me anything about your health. Nothing. Don't tell me anything. I don't want to know anything. Nothing. So I'm going to look at your eyes and tongue, and I'm going to tell you what's going on with you. And I started getting really good at it. And people were like, wait, all you're looking at is my eyes and my tongue, and you're telling me all that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm that guy now that looked at me 20 years ago. Now I'm that guy. And then I started bringing lab work in and verifying what I was seeing in the eye. So now I can tell people in part what's going to be on their lab work when I look at their eyes. And
so can you give an example of, we were talking about diabetes, or it could be something else. Like, how do you see diabetes in the eye, or a different condition if that's not appropriate?
Well, first of all, you have to say you can't diagnose based on a condition. It's an assessment of a pattern is what I call it.
Okay.
So diabetes, the Chinese would call diabetes something different, and they would have 15 kinds of diabetes. There'd be damp diabetes, or dry diabetes, or hot diabetes, or cold diabetes, or wind diabetes, or, so they'd have all these poetic terms about it. So like, you could give me 10 diabetics and I would give you 10 different treatments.
Okay. Because you're looking at root cause, or it's just not as simple.
Here's the simple script I was taught. We don't treat diseases, we treat people with diseases. And that really impressed me about this one book, The Web That Has No Weaver. Ted Kupchak was my first book in Chinese medicine. And there were a bunch of these early books. They would say, okay, I got 10 rheumatoid arthritis patients. Look at the treatment for each of them. And it was individualized for each one.
Okay.
So that's the art of medicine, right? The science of medicine and the art of medicine. That's why it's a practice, ideally. And we don't come to conclusions like, oh, the science is settled was the one. Science is never
one
settled.
Of the dumbest things ever said. That is really
idiotic, right? Idiotic, like the science is settled. Yeah, well, you just named yourself as a
and
moron.
Also, I am God. Cheers. Yeah.
Right, yeah, you get it. Right. So then the fun part of it is like there's like I have a client, I just, they'll just send me their photographs of their eyes and tongue if they're over in, if they're down the south or New York and they don't want to drive out here. Then I get to look at this stuff and look at what their context is. Like, okay, can they be happy? What's their life pattern? Do they have a good partner? Are they alone? Why are they alone? Why do they have a partner? Where do they live? So the eyes become part of this. Like, yes, I can say you have the patterns of elevated blood sugar, because when elevated blood sugar starts to damage the body, the whites of the eyes get these little jagged lines. They're called
Interesting.
they're called damage lines, and it means the new tissue being birthed is not healthy. Like that RDW on the red blood cell differential, that means random distribution width. So if that number goes off away from 13, then you have a lot of random new red blood cells of different varying sizes, and that's not good.
Thank you. I never knew what that meant. So I get asked to read blood work all the time, and I always am telling people I have a narrow scope. I can do your lipids. We can talk triglycerides, we can talk cholesterol, we can talk blood sugar, but don't be going over into the other areas, because that is not in my wheelhouse. But that is really interesting. This is just, I'm blown away, but I knew I would be. And there's obviously so much more. So tell me, your practice is called Health Alchemy. Tell us what this is about.
I was just musing about this yesterday, that there's this like hypnotic, like, oh, make it really complicated sounding, and then you confuse people, and then they're your victim, right? So here's a good example. One of my closest friends in my life, her husband was diagnosed with, here's the medical term, check it out, so scary sounding, idiopathic thrombocytotic purpura.
Right.
And the treatment plan was remove the spleen, hip replacement surgery, and he was 35 years old.
What does the spleen have to do with the hip?
Right, exactly. This guy was cha-ching going to make a big fat commission on these operations. The surgeon was, right? And the hematologist and the surgeon were in together. So I saw the letters and from them, and my new friend was like, Craig, my husband's 35 years old, hip replacement, the joint only lasts 25 years. So that means he's going to have at least one more replacement in his life. And please help us. And so I'm like, okay, let's see your intake. He had coffee every day. He had an inflammatory sort of, and I ironically, she was a health nut, this woman. So her husband would go off, and like husbands tend to do, oh, drink my coffee and eat my candy. And he was a computer solar guy, and men are like little boys. They try and get away with as much as they can, because I was one of them, see, until mommy busts me, and mommy's the wife, right? Oh shit, I'm busted. Mommy caught me, So he got caught.
This morning went out to put a receipt from a car repair in a certain person's glove box and found some orange slice thing. Didn't mention it though, not until now.
So I said, hey Kelly, look, let's break down this word idiopathic thrombocytotic. Let's break it down. Let's break it down into Latin. So idiopathic means we don't know.
Oh, that's a good start.
Means we don't know what it is. So like idiot, idiot,
right.
Idiopathic. Okay, so we got that part. Okay, they don't know what it is. Great, that's a good start. Okay, thrombocyte is a platelet.
Okay.
Idiopathic thrombocytotic. Okay, so it's something to do with the platelets. Purpura means easy bruising. Okay. Purple. Bruises are purple. So there's this purple bruising thing from platelets that we don't know how it's being caused. And once they got that information, these are very smart people. They're like, oh my God, they put the wool over our eyes. I'm like, they don't even know what it is, but they're going to remove your spleen and replace your hip based on something they don't even know what it is, because they said they don't know what it is by the word idiopathic. And they were like, oh my God, you're God. And I'm like, all I did was break down the word and demystify it for you, right? Because they had you in the trance, And so we talked them out of it. I said, you got to stop coffee, bro, and you got to change this and do that. So his platelet levels were normal in 6 weeks.
So let's talk
And
about that.
so wait. So the hematologist, the best part is still to come. The hematologist sends them a letter when they denied treatment. They get a letter that I saw signed by the hematologist, said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, you're not going to let us remove your spleen and do the hip replacement. Your future's fucked. Regretfully yours, MD." Regretfully yours.
Yeah, that's nice.
I mean,
Reminds me of a certain White House Christmas communication saying that everyone who decided based on their own free will that they did not choose to want to be vaccinated would have a winter of death and destruction.
is that what they
Regretfully
said?
yours, the White
Did
House.
they really say
Yes,
that?
that is a real thing. A
Oh my
winter of
God.
death and destruction. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.
Oh my God.
I have a screenshot of it because I was like, are we in outer space? What's going on? Yeah. Regretfully yours. Winter of death and destruction. The coffee. Let's go back to that because a lot of people drink coffee. I had a coffee this morning.
I
Is
love coffee.
coffee bad for everyone or just that dude?
Okay. So there's some heartbreak and good news in this.
It's
Okay.
okay. I'll take it like a man. I'm going to take it like a man.
I have a comment there, but I won't say it now. Okay, so coffee. So let's start with my top level teachers who I considered masters unanimously said no coffee, no stimulants, because they're catabolic by their very nature. They tell the body, please tear down tissue so you can have your joy and pleasure. And then I went a little deeper. I was like, well, why do plants make caffeine? Because plants aren't human centric. You know, they have their own agenda.
Yeah.
So why is the plant making caffeine? It's not for human pleasure, certainly. So caffeine's an insecticide.
Oh,
So the plants don't get.
Not sound too delicious.
But coffee isn't just caffeine. Green tea isn't just caffeine. You know, black tea isn't just caffeine. It's part of this matrix. So what I started to see was I saw the coffee drinkers around me, and so I started doing some study of I was working in a chiropractic office, remember, for 10 years. So I had on the average 20 to 30 clients a week, asked a lot of questions. Hey, why don't you stop coffee and just see what happens, you know? So everybody who stopped coffee sincerely for, 3 or 4 weeks, pain levels on the average, this is thousands of people, dropped 50%.
It makes sense because it's stimulating
But there were outliers who didn't change at all when they stopped coffee. And I started getting curious about who are these outliers. And then the Diadamo in the blood type book, he mentions one of the 4 blood types can drink coffee. I don't remember if it's a B, or an AB, but it's not O. And
damn it.
I know. You and I could have a whole conversation about sympathetic, parasympathetic nerve balance and how that ties in with protein type versus carb type and blood type, but that's another longer thing. So
that's awesome.
What I started running into is I had a few pissed off coffee drinkers. One lady 10 years ago, she came in and, I'm 100% referral because I'm such a freak. People love hearing the results and the miracles. So this lady came in for her miracle. I told her, I shouldn't have said it, but I said, you're not going to get anywhere drinking coffee. And that was arrogant because I'm not her. And her pain levels didn't change when she got off coffee. And then fast forward till about a year ago, I started looking at this a little bit more. And yes, there is a type of person that metabolizes coffee. Like there are people that can drink coffee and go right to bed, for example.
I know, which, I'm like a 1 cup a day, if that. And if I do anything after even noon, forget sleep. It is so, I'll shake if I have 2 cups. And then there are people that drink coffee all day long. That's this.
Right. So just to finish that off, then that thought, then caffeine, coffee in general, then I've had to. So if you look at the results of the coffee enema, that is a correct way to use coffee. I've done at least 1,000 coffee enemas.
So put it in the other end.
Now I tell people it's too bad we don't have taste buds down there because you could appreciate it.
That is too good, man. It's an exit strategy.
But that's to all your listeners. Hey, if you want a one of the freest, easiest therapies to, okay, coffee enemas, they used to do them in hospitals. The nurses tell me that for headaches and pain. And add in depression, I can wipe out depression, headaches, and pain with a coffee enema.
Oh, dude, that is great. That is awesome. So
You
are
just
you
got to
like,
overcome your, think of a heterosexual male, I thought about doing enema for a year because I was like, what if I like it? That was the main thing that kept me
it's
from it.
okay.
I don't want to
Right.
like something going up there, because what does that mean about me?
It means you're gay, dude, and that's okay. Oh, goodness. Wow. So, it's interesting because that's something that for me, my first thing is like, ew, grody, but I'm really trying in my 4th decade to just, when that comes up, like that split-second reaction, to just throttle back, because many things that I do now, I wouldn't have done in the last decade or the decade before. Like it's like this, you were talking about enlightenment. I know that that's, no is the answer to Dixie enlightened, but to me, just openness. It was and I do want to get into this. I tried a Zen Buddhist online service or gathering just Sunday. And one of the things they were talking about, which I absolutely love because I'm a yoga teacher, is strong back, like soft, open heart. And I just thought, gosh, that's beautiful. And then we proceeded to meditate silently on that for 30 minutes. And it was just like, I love this. So you are infinite amounts about Buddhism. I've admired it, I would say, from afar. Like, again, another question that could go on for 6 hours, but what can you tell us about, Buddhism and its importance in your life?
My teacher, so everything's a pointer towards reality, you could say. So Buddhist is a language pointing towards the spiritual realities. And so Buddhism, the Buddha wasn't a Buddhist. Let's start there.
Okay.
So the ism was made by people after, just like Christianity. Jesus wasn't a Christian, right?
Right.
So they were using parable and metaphor to describe what really can't be described. And so here's what my teacher said, and I the same thing happened to me. He said, I had a male Zen Buddhist teacher, and I had a female Zen Buddhist teacher. And after 15, 20 years, I woke up out of Buddhism. So when he woke up out of the limited concept of Buddhism into the larger concept or the larger reality of spirituality. So what happened to me over the last few decades is I can pick up the Bible now, or a Buddhist text, or an Ayurvedic text, or a Hindu blah, blah, blah. And if I can understand the language, then I can interpret it almost immediately through my heart mind, not this thing up here. So Buddhism then to me becomes, when we use the pointers enough and we inquire sincerely enough, like the koan. I mean, just muse on this for a few years. What is the sound of one hand clapping? That's a Zen koan. Or who were you before your parents were born?
Oof.
Right? There's no answer to those inquiries. None, zero. So you have to stew in the cognitive dissonance. And by stewing in that discomfort, the answer can be experienced, but not talked about per se.
Sounds a lot like yoga, stewing in the discomfort.
One of my first yoga teachers said, most of you are just moving body parts around. So look at your face. You're all strained and stressed out. He goes, you're not even doing yoga. You're just doing exercises.
Well, it's like what the West does with yoga. Right. Around.
Right.
Yeah.
So Buddhism's another identity. Like, I'm a Buddhist. To me, I think Buddhism is there are a certain group of people, they need religion, they need structure. So I believe that, there's the literalist Buddhists, they have a term for that. And then there's the more metaphorical Buddhists, and like it's Theravada, or they have these words, these subsects of Buddhism, just like there's subsects of Christianity. And once I started seeing the subtypes of Buddhism, I'm like, I'm out.
Right.
You know, there's one reality and all these ways of describing it, but they're no better than the Hindus or the Christians or the Arabs or any of it, you know.
That's my issue. You know, I grew up Southern girl in North Carolina and did not grow up with a religion. And in my college years, really tried to study numerous religions, not deeply per se, but I was wanting to belong to something. And at the end of it, I basically just said, you know, all of these religions have beautiful teachings. You know, to me, it's about the heart, the mind, the teaching. But the problem with religion, even though I really respect its place in the world and see a value in it, is the labeling, and then the like, well, our camp's right, you know, and that's, you know, it. I took my child to church a couple weeks ago because I want to expose him, but I also want to expose him to other religions. And I admitted to him, we had a great talk about it afterwards. I said, you know, I just want you to know that my big beef with Christianity is my biggest one is the whole thing where if you don't believe in this, you're going to hell. Like that's you lost me there. A, and B, all the Hindus and the Buddhists and the Jews, they're all going to hell too. Like, come
We're all
on.
screwed.
And then I have to go and convert other people to be like me. Like, no, I don't think Jesus would even agree with that. I don't know, but it's they're good things to ponder. So you're also a trained chef and you're into permaculture. You know, you had me at food. So you talk a lot on your website about soil health. So important. So any things you'd like to discuss about soil health and the importance of that from the, you know, the creation of the real foods that we eat? Why is that so important?
You know, that's a really good question, because now that people think about it, but when I got into nutrition, I was at Cal Poly, and their philosophy used to be, I don't know what it still is, was learn by doing. So you learn nutrition by doing nutrition. Okay, well, what's nutrition then? Well, doesn't nutrition start with the plant growing in the soil, you would think, with the sun shining on it and using the water? I mean, you know, so I had friends that were studying permaculture, and that's why I started studying permaculture, was part of my nutrition program, because I was like, I need to know. So Royal Lee, I don't know if you know this, but Royal Lee has a book that sums this up. It's called From Soil to Supplement. It's one of Royal Lee's lesser known.
Because of our mutual friend Stephanie, with Saline River Press, she's taught me a lot about Royal Lee and standard process, etc. But please continue.
So Lee was kind of onto this, and then I realized, like, okay, because Cal Poly, for the nutrition program, I was the last year they required it. You had to be a trained chef if you're going to be a nutritionist, basically.
Oh, I love this. Healing happens in the kitchen, right?
I loved
macros.
I got to learn cooking as part of my bachelor's degree.
That is so cool.
I was so excited. And then, of course, they dropped it. But what I tell people is I had a friend that he was a little younger than me, and he really loved the nutrition stuff, but he chose soil science over nutrition for his bachelor's degree. I was like, wow, dude, you're choosing to actually study the science of the soil as your specialty. And that wasn't lost on me from, okay, I got the cooking skills, which is the end, how to make the food good, but how do you grow the good food, right? How do you grow the good animals? So that boils back down to the alchemy question. It goes all the way back to alchemy. As I called my practice alchemy, because there's 5 main elements that mostly everything's made out of: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, sulfur, and nitrogen. It's that simple. Those are the Lego building blocks. What's that guy's name? David Stewart wrote in The Chemistry of Essential Oils, subtitle, God's Love Manifest in Molecules.
Ooh.
So he calls them the chosen ones, CHOSN, the chosen ones. Mostly everything's made out of Isn't that the greatest acronym? The chosen ones. That's David Stewart's acronym.
Okay.
And I read this book, and he says the very premise of how we're studying nutrition is wrong. Cells don't have CD14 spike protein receptors. Cells are reading frequency and energies, and the snapshot of that process we label as chemistry, but that's not what our bodies are actually doing. Our bodies are operating based on actions and frequencies and other things. And then the snapshot, if you will, is part of it, but is the snapshot of you running a race, in fact, you running the race? No, it's not. It's dead. And that's why Royal Lee said chemistry is dead.
Wow.
It's dead by its very definition, because it's a snapshot of a chosen parameter like hemoglobin A1C at a moment in time.
Right.
Therefore, it's dead. And we worship death, don't we?
When we're not avoiding it.
I studied cadavers in my biology classes. It was disgusting. And I thought to myself, when I'm looking at this cadaver, why aren't we studying living, healthy people and what they're doing, right?
Oh, right.
Right? So, yeah, the soil then, boils down to a couple of simple things, like plants have to have nitrogen. Oh,
Yeah.
It turns out nitrogen's in our waste, right? And our poop and pee is loaded with nitrogen. Oh, why don't I recycle that back into the soil? Ding, 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 ding. And then here's the one that Stephanie and I, that's why Stephanie liked my article called The 5 Fakes, because refined oil and refined carbohydrate are only carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen.
Oh.
By their definitions, they're hydrocarbons related to petroleum.
Wow. Well, something you may not know about the nourishment mindset is in,
Woo!
I think, every episode, I might have skipped one or two, but in every episode, I make a point of shitting on seed oils, factory fats. So thank you for doing it for me, because they are the worst of the worst. And I did not know that about the chosen and how they're lacking. So is the point, they're lacking nitrogen? What is the it's
Okay,
only...
so you have to realize that you're dealing with Lego building blocks, right?
Yes.
CHOS and N are like leg, and so the configurations can be infinite, right?
Right.
So you have these fatty acids that are made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And so here's what I learned through cooking. And so you've been cooking, so those when you deep fry, there's those screens above that suck the air up, and then they get all sticky and gooey in there in the screen. Well, that's oil that's polymerized, because fat is on the same spectrum as plastic, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So when go to the hardware store and buy linseed oil. What's linseed oil at the hardware store? It's a varnish sort of thing.
Okay.
But what was it?
That I don't know.
It's stale, rancid flax oil is what it is.
Oh, lovely. With a nice name. Sort of like rapeseed oil. That one didn't pass the marketing team. It had a new name.
So this is going to add to your practice, because I'm on board with you. The cell membranes of the body are the brains of the cell, and they're made out of fat and protein and cholesterol. So if you're having seed oils and refined polymerized plastic-like oils, you're going to have stupid cells.
There it is, y'all. Do you want to be stupid? I don't think so. Get the seed oils out of the diet. Even though they have the heart healthy. Isn't that just cute? They have a little American Heart Association. I always tell people, when you see that heart, run. They want you to eat that so that they can have a cardiology practice. That's how I'm doing. This is what you were talking about with your 35-year-old friend. Let's cut your spleen out. Let's put a stent in there. Go ahead and keep eating those seed oils, because they lead to stents, and we like stents. So we have talked about a lot. Just incredible. Thank you. I want to come to Santa Cruz and have dinner at your house, Craig. On that note, I always ask guests a final question, and then we'll get to where people can find you. But the question is this, because we've mentioned healing happens from the soil to the food to your table. Winemakers always say, well, how do you make great wine? The ones who have their shit together say, well, it's all the vineyard manager. It's the vineyard manager, the practices of growing the grapes is how you make good wine, and then I'm here to just not F it up. So, tableside tradition. Do you have a favorite tableside tradition? Now, some people will talk about a holiday, or I had one guest, Ben Azadi, talk about his Persian mom's, a dish that she makes. Mine, I will share with you, is just the simple act of a toast each evening with my family. And of course, just the act of sitting down at a table and eating, which it's funny that is a thing. My French friends are like, why is that special? And I'm like, well, you have no idea. Our culture does drive-by eating, like they don't, or drive-through eating. Like sitting at a table is considered like bougie, having a real plate and a napkin. So I'm curious for you, or do you have a favored tableside tradition?
Well, for example, I've been leading community potluck dinners now for a couple of decades.
Oh, that's so cool.
Last night I led one, about 10 people showed up. And so it was like the first lady just started eating. And then I'm sitting here kind of cringing going, we haven't said grace and we haven't given thanks, So my mother's father was a weekly church-going Protestant, but he was a man of God and he was also a man of nature. And that's what I remember from childhood was him chopping the heads off chickens, and dressing them up himself, So this was a real man.
Right.
And so they would say grace. It was a big pattern of saying grace. And I realized I had a friend that he's dead now, and I am who I am because of him. He was a man that knew down in San Luis Obispo where everything could be harvested at all times of the year. So the avocados are in season, the lemons are in season, the roots are in season. And, Lee Osbaldiston was his name. And this is a prayer I like to say. It's a very simple prayer that I'll just mint on the way out. This is a good way to what he would say. And I like to get this out there. It's dedicated to Lee. And the prayer is, earth who gives to us this food, sun that makes it ripe and good. Dear earth, dear sun, by you we live. Our love and thanks to you we give. Blessings.
I love that. Thank you.
That was Lee.
Lee. All right. Cheers to Lee, y'all. I'm Dixie Lee. So
nice.
Craig, where do people find you? You said you're all by referral, but if someone wants to follow you or read about you or get your book, your 200-page book, where do we find you?
So I'm out there, I have on my website, you go to the healthalchemy.com, and I chose the ALK alchemy, so it's health, ALKEMY.com. And at the bottom, you scroll down the homepage, there's the socials tab, and that goes to really my link tree, which has, the link tree has the everything. So I've been on YouTube since 2007. I have at least 600 YouTube videos and 25 playlists. So gigantic YouTube channel. I got my 450 subscribers and my 500,000 views. I'm a minor celebrity, whatever. And then I started getting strikes when, the problem started.
That means you're on to something good. Congratulations. Yeah.
So I went over to Rumble. So my newer material the last 2 years is on Rumble. And Rumble, I've been able to say things on Rumble I could never say on YouTube. Like stuff that, so Rumble's another one. The YouTube is the original Health Alchemy. I think it's just original Health Alchemy. My Facebook page is my personal page, Craig Lane, and then I have a Health Alchemy nutrition page. I've got a TikTok page, Health Alchemy, Instagram page, Health Alchemy, LinkedIn page. I mean,
you're busy.
You name it, I probably got it.
It's all about the link tree. That's awesome. I'm waiting to get kicked off YouTube. I should probably just go over to Rumble. It'd be kind of fun to get kicked off first.
I just don't want to lose all the videos I made.
I know.
Some of them I haven't downloaded yet,
Oh, you've been on there way long. I've only been on there a few months. So.
Yeah, 2007, I'm like, they were just going to kick me off, and I'm like,
I know.
please tell me what's the timestamp and what I said, right? That's fair. And they wouldn't
Well,
send
we
that to
don't
me.
know. That's what did you call it?
Idiopathic.
Idiopathic.
No, we're going to have this broad general, you violated our broad community standard because you said what we don't want to hear. We don't want people to hear what you're saying. And we're not going to,
Definitely not.
like in a court of law, they would have to present at this timestamp, Craig said this. So, please, and the solution would be just eliminate what you said, right? Just edit it out.
Right. Well, but you have broken the rule of saying what cannot be said, so there will be no justice for you. You're just banned. That's how it rolls now. But thankfully, I think people are waking up to this. So, well, Craig, it has been a pleasure to learn a little bit about you. I appreciate all the wisdom that you have imparted, and especially the laughs. You're just easy to talk to, man. So thank you for your time. Thank you for reaching out to me. And I know that everyone out there listening and the viewers that we have on YouTube will enjoy this episode. So thanks so much. And in closing, y'all, you know where to find us. We're wherever you listen to podcasts. If you haven't yet bought the book, The Nourishment Mindset, you can get a complimentary shipped signed copy from favorfat.com, or if you're already in Amazon's website buying toilet paper and video games and whatever else you got going, you can find Nourishment Mindset there too. Sante, y'all. Have a good one.